live and close up is pretty well impossible. There's just so much water, it's pretty murky. Here's this place, it's a bar in the middle of Manaus, and this could be just the perfect place to check them out. Absolutely amazing opportunity to get eyeball to eyeball with these things. It really is prehistoric looking, like stone or metal or something, you know, real armour plating. And the other thing that's very striking about these fish, you know, they are very elongated, they're quite cylindrical. That is just perfect design for an ambush predator, you know, speed over a short distance.
Arapaima are naturally predatory, engulfing any fish that fit into that bony mouth, including piranha. They will even consume birds and other animals, sucking them down from the water surface.
And then they've got this very gruesome technique for actually finishing their prey off. They have a tongue with a piece of bone inside it, and they actually use that bony tongue to crush the small fish against the roof of the mouth, so it's not a very pleasant way to go, I'd imagine. These are pretty big fish. You know, that mouth isn't big enough to swallow a person, so any stories like that you've really got to discount. But it could still actually kill you. That is a very solid lump of bone with an enormous mass of muscle behind it. I've actually been on the receiving end of one of these things. It hit me in the chest, and no exaggeration, I could still feel that a month and a half later. It just bruised me so deeply.
It was 7 years ago, and I was helping a friend of mine, a research scientist, with his captive breeding program for Arapaima. His long-term goal is to take the pressure off the wild population, and he needed to capture his fish to pair them up with likely mates. We caught several fish already and weighed and measured them without problem, when I let my guard down. While drawing in a net with an Arapaima trapped inside, this hard-nosed giant turned from fish into missile. From nowhere, I had 100 pounds of solid bone smash into me. Weeks later, a doctor described my injury as similar to the impact of striking the steering column during a car crash. I'm not saying this is some malignant creature that will deliberately hunt and eat you. It doesn't have the mouth for it. But corner one of these beasts and it will launch a preemptive strike.
It is this event that makes me believe the Arapaima may be the killer in question. If these fishermen were hunting Arapaima or accidentally caught one in a net, this animal will violently defend itself. Just one thrash connecting with the head is all it would take to knock you unconscious, leaving you at the mercy of the Amazon's scavenging river monsters.
If I am going to investigate this theory, I need to demonstrate that my experience wasn't a freak occurrence. And Arapaima do have the power, the ability, and even the intent to take a fisherman out.
But more importantly, I need to prove that despite overfishing, there are still Arapaima out there large enough to do the damage. And the best way I can do that is by catching a giant Arapaima.
But as I set off on my mission, leaving the port of Manaus, my boat captain tells me that if I'm interested in Arapaima, then I should definitely visit one of these floating houses. Salted Arapaima used to be a meal enjoyed across the Amazon. But since a ban on commercial fishing, a few enterprising ribeirinhos, or river people, have started to farm them in pens like this to satisfy the demand for Arapaima meat.
I've heard these Arapaima in this enclosure here do something quite spectacular.
I've arrived just as they're preparing to fish one out for their own cooking pot.
Bom dia! Eu vou aí. Não. Tudo.
Aqui vamos tirar pedaço.
Eu sou Jeremy.
Seu nome é meu Alegria.
Alegria, eh?
Alegria.
Seu Alegria, which means happiness, is he's about to try and get an Arapaima out of here. There's a few in here,
And he says it's not an easy job. It can be a wee bit interesting. I'm going to ask him if maybe I can help. Thank you. Figure the olio there are 30 fish in here, and he says they're just jumping everywhere, and they are just, you know, you're just having to duck. You risk getting hit by the head, and this is about the size of a boxing ring. It's about having, you know, it's like having 30 people coming at you and just having to avoid them. Right, I'm going to have to just prepare myself a little bit.
Suddenly, all my old fears from my painful encounter are back. But if I'm going to catch an arapaima capable of killing a man, then I need to face up to my fear. And if that means getting back into the water with one of these beasts, then that's what I'm going to have to do.